Um, they have so many corners. We asked them the question, how do you evaluate these guys on the back end of the roster? I mean, they never get any meaningful reps. And it's like, well, if you get 2 reps, you got to make the most of them. And I get the football mentality of it, but I mean, come on, you can't expect some young kid to do something with 2 reps. I mean, he might do everything right. He might line up correctly. He might show the proper technique, but he's not going to be able to splash himself on the roster. And then he went to preseason games, and that's real because the Eagles aren't going to play many of their key players in preseason.
Right.
So that's where they'll get their opportunity.
It is a football Friday here on Birds 365. Getting ready for a weekend, and we're getting that much closer to Eagles football. Oh, John McMullen got to experience Eagle football yesterday in the sauna that was South Philadelphia, but another team will actually be on the field 1 week from today with their first preseason game against the Jets. Good to have you back, Johnny Mac. A little warm for you yesterday. The Nick Sirianni seemed to be eating it up.
Yeah. Well, you should have saw his T-shirt. I don't know about that, but it was hot. It was a hot one. But that's training camp in the NFL. I was surprised. I thought they'd go the opposite way. They did not. So they moved up practice an hour, but they had their longest practice of the summer. Was scheduled to go an hour and 50 minutes. I clocked it at 1:46 exactly. So they didn't beg off the heat. They moved it up, so they did as much as they could, but it was still stinking hot out there, Jody.
It was very hot, and yes, they did stay hydrated, and they stayed out there. I would have bet on like $1.10 if I were.
Yeah, I had $1.15 before we started,
and I might, if you had said it at 1:15, I might have taken the over, under. Excuse me. So kudos to them. They did put the time in. I guess my question to you is, who's the guy that you always say is the mastermind behind shortened practice? Arch
Arch.
Okay.
He's the
Was he
Eagles'
not to be seen yesterday?
chief medical
Is he
officer.
still on
No,
vacay?
I don't. When I say that I don't say Arch determines the practice schedule. I think he gives his advice, and his advice is there on the side of safety. And the Eagles set up this practice schedule where, that's probably as long as they'll go. Maybe they'll go 2 hours one day at some point. But for the most part, we know they don't they've done this cost benefit analysis. I talk about it all the time. It's more important to get the players healthy as possible, to get the key players as healthy as possible for week 1, September 11th in Detroit. And by the way, I agree with that. That part of it, I agree with it. So to me, the question is, I think the assumption is coaches hate to admit they don't have enough time. We asked Denard Wilson, for instance, last week, the Eagles secondary coach, and they have so many corners. We asked them the question, how do you evaluate these guys on the back end of the roster? I mean, they never get any meaningful reps, and it's like, well, if you get 2 reps, you got to make the most of them. And I get the football mentality of it, but I mean, come on, you can't expect some young kid to do something with 2 reps. I mean, he might do everything right. He might line up correctly. He might show the proper technique, but he's not going to be able to splash himself on the roster. And then he went to preseason games, and that's real because the Eagles aren't going to play many of their key players in preseason.
Right.
So that's where they'll get their opportunity. But I mean, you don't have enough time to prepare. It's common sense compared to what it was before. Everybody's under the same rules, so it's a sliding scale. It doesn't matter. So to me, it comes to the teams that use every piece of every minute available to them to prepare versus the other teams that go in a different direction and are concerned more about the safety part of it. That to me is the real question. And I kind of agree with the Eagles, to be honest, because I've always said if you can't prepare like you want to, like you would want to, like the old days, keep everybody as healthy as possible. Make sure your good players are out there.
That is understood. But prior to yesterday's game, prior to yesterday's practice, you found out there were a whole bunch of Eagles not practicing anyway.
Well, that's
Even
still
though,
safety related, though, Jody. They're so cautious with everything. Like if you want a hangnail, you're not going to practice for 5 days. But they had some concussions, which are obviously, and that was the problem with the Eagles' offense
yeah, how did
yesterday.
they get a concussion with everybody wearing the Guardian helmets?
Well, yeah, it's not a good advertisement for the Guardian caps, is it? 33% more safety wasn't enough for Jordan Mailata and Andre Dillard. I knew Andre was hurt because he left the practice field. We talked about it on Tuesday. All the days run together. But, it didn't look serious. It didn't look like any kind of leg or, he wasn't in pain. So it makes sense. It evidently suffered a concussion at some point. Jordan, I mean, he finished. I have no idea where he got his concussion. Maybe you just bang heads and you get a headache later. Who knows? But, yeah, I mean, as good as the Eagles' offensive line is, that tells you, man, you lose your first team left tackle, and then you lose your second team left tackle, and you're down to your third team left tackle, which is LaRaven Clark, who is probably, if you want to go down the list, probably as good as you're going to get as a third team left tackle. That's still not good. The Eagles' defense feasted, and that's why the Eagles' offense had a difficult time yesterday.
LaRaven Clark did not shine yesterday. Is that what you're telling
me? He did not. He did not.
Did you ask Denard Wilson about that? That hey, he got a chance, and see you later. Bye. Yeah. You got to be able. You never know when you're going to get those reps, but when they are,
2 reps,
damn it,
baby.
you better step in and play at the highest level.
Mario Goodrich, take advantage of your 2 reps.
Man, that's harsh.
Yeah, that is harsh.
All right. One other guy who was hurt that I want to ask about if you have any extra insider knowledge. Devonta Smith. You said earlier in the week, again, the days are running one into the other for me, too, that you think that Devonta has been used a little less in all the reps that you've seen in practice. It seems to you to be Goddard or Brown, and the other guys get the scraps when ever the ball is spread around a little bit, but the Eagles going out of their way, or at least Jalen Hurts is with the first team reps to get the ball to his 2 top targets, which means Devonta's no better than third, and the drop-off seems to be between second and third, and that he hadn't gotten the ball as much as you would have thought that he would to this point in camp. Well, he can't get it at all if he's not out on the field. Groin issue, didn't practice. Is this possibly one of the reasons why he's not getting the ball as much as you thought he would, that he just hasn't been running 100% this camp?
No, I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think he hurt his groin Tuesday, and he was on the field, by the way, yesterday. So that's a clear indication it's not very serious. So that's what I was talking about. The Eagles are going to be cautious with their key players. If it were serious, he wouldn't be near the field. He was out there playing extra coach to some of the young receivers and watching practice, and they're just being cautious with them. Like I said, if there's anything that you're not optimal level, they're gonna keep you out of practice. Yeah, the other stuff about him not getting the football, I'm a little bit concerned with that. But I think that's more of a coaching thing than a quarterback thing or a player thing. Like, I don't think it's Devonta Smith's fault. He should be getting the ball. He was running well. I joked he might have got hurt when Bradbury lit him up, but that was impressive. That was one of the most impressive plays of camp. But he's a really good player. And Jalen Hurts is not purposefully not getting the football. Again, the Eagles' offense is designed with 2 players in mind, passing offense. And, 1 is going to be A.J. Brown, 2 is going to be Dallas Goedert, 3 is going to be Devonta Smith. That's fine. I don't have a problem with the hierarchy, but you have to understand, okay, if most plays, you have 2 significant progressions, and then you're not getting to a safeguard, well, then you got to flip it around as a coaching staff. you gotta you can't show the tendency that I'm always going to AJ Brown, I'm always going to Dallas Goedert. You got a really good other receiver, and you got to break those tendencies, and you got to make Devonta the top progression on more plays. I think so. To me, that's a coaching issue, and we'll see if that continues. I think they'll figure it out. They have to be more disciplined and say, all right, we got to rotate this thing. That I think is the problem. But maybe that's they're not game planning, so they're just running plays, and their first progression is AJ Brown. So when he's out there, he's going to get a lot of traffic. And number 2 is Dallas Goedert. He's going to get a lot of traffic. Hopefully it changes when they actually game plan.
We shall see, yes, once they actually start to play game. Practice is one thing, games are another. One other position I want to ask you about before we get our first guest up here in a couple of minutes. Our buddy Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal going to hop aboard. Always good to catch up with Martin. And then a special guest in hour number 2. But the position I want to get to is tight end. Calcaterra still not back yet. Most of us, and this is just our guesswork at this time, if you're telling me Goddard's getting all the important reps in practice, I don't know how they are actually determining who should be tight end 2, tight end 3, practice squad. Thank you for participating. We'll have a bus ticket ready for you. Tight end position hasn't been one that we've had reason to talk about much, but Calcaterra's been out for a while now. They did get Rich Rod back, the old standby. Rich Rodriguez back off the PUP list. Other than Dallas Goedert, where are the Eagles at the tight end position right now?
Yeah, I mean, Stoll has taken all the second team reps. Noah Togiai has started to show up as the third team tight end. He's starting to get back in the conversation. He's actually taken advantage of his Denard Wilson opportunity, and he's gotten more reps with Calcaterra out. Best play of the day was Gardner Minshew's shovel pass to Noah Togiai at the goal line, sort of an Andy Reid look that the Eagles have been really bad at since Andy left, and they ran it perfectly. So he's showing up a little bit. Maybe he gets back in the conversation. But, Calcaterra's in the same mold as Devonta Smith, not from importance, but, he tweaked his hamstring. All right, you're sitting until you're 100%, until you're optimal. So, as a 6th-round pick, typically that would be devastating in training camp. I don't know if it is for him. If he can get back in 10 days, and because he looked pretty good early in camp before he got hurt. They don't have depth at tight end. We've talked about it a lot. Jack Stoll is a good blocker, a solid player, but man, he just gives you no threat in the passing game. And you don't want that in 12 personnel because you become a little bit too predictable. It takes a receiver essentially out of the mix, except for an outlet. And it also forces you to, play Dallas Goedert at the flex all the time. And one of the strengths of his game is blocking. And even though it's not sexy, you want to have that ability to move him wherever you want to move him on a particular play. So depth from a tight end perspective is one of the bigger concerns. And we've talked about that quite a bit. And Richard didn't look healthy, by the way.
Play yet? You talk about
JJ got hurt too. JJ got hurt. JJ left practice yesterday. Don't know what I did see him after practice, and he was limping a little bit, so I don't think it was heat related. I think it was some kind of leg injury. But yeah, JJ's probably not going to practice Saturday. I've had to guess, and Saturday we'll find out the actual injury. But he looked like he was limping a little bit.
All right. And I know we're probably taking this further than we need to, but how many guys on the practice squad again? Is the practice
16.
Squad? You can have up to 16, and there are veterans allowed. There are no statuses where if you've been in the league for too long, you can't be on the practice squad. So anybody can be on it. 2 max, right? Tight ends. They can't have 3 tight ends
No, I
If
wouldn't.
Stoll is going to be there as your number 2, and he has limitations that you've correctly pointed out, you'd want to have some backups on the practice squad, because if Stoll is just giving you nothing other than blocking, you might want to give someone else a shot if they haven't really come to a decision by the end of camp. They 2 is the max. Do you think they have 2 tight ends on the practice squad?
Yeah, probably. They probably won't go higher. But we'll see. I mean, with that number, you can do pretty much anything you want. And it might be 14. I have to double check. They might have split the difference. It was 16 in COVID, but I have to double check on that. But I'll do that in the break. Either way, it's a lot of players. You're not going to keep 3 tight ends, though. I mean, it's not. You're going to go heavy on positions of, value, and where there might be soft tissue injuries. Wide receiver, you're going to have a couple wide receiver. You're going to have a couple corners. Always defensive backs. There's always a lot of defensive backs because those guys go down like, from a percentage standpoint, much more. So, but yeah, I could see him keeping 2 tight ends. But they already have a bunch of bodies at tight end. You want better bodies so you can actually play them.
Right.
That's the bigger issue.
They will be scouring the waiver wire, but I'm just intrigued because no one has jumped up and said, "Oh, I'm making a team," or if you can't find spot for you, I know I'm making a practice squad. They're all kind of in that gray area middle. That's why you can't differentiate, and you need to know how many you think they would keep. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Joining us next, one Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal. We'll talk to Martin here on Birds 365.